Monday Night Rugby on Off the Ball
with Air Sport. Watch Munster v Leinster on December 29th exclusively live on Air Sport.
So we have the opening round of the Champions Cup, the Heineken Champions Cup, to reflect on. We had on Friday night Leinster in phenomenal form, walloping Wasps 52 points to 3. On Saturday, Munster went to Sandy Park and came home with 2 points instead of just the one many of us figured would be a good result. And then Ulster in Belfast beat Leicester 24 points to 10. And in the Challenge Cup, Connacht beat Bordeaux 22 points to 10. So a very good opening weekend for the Irish provinces. We have Eddie O'Sullivan on the line. Ruaidhri O'Connor of the Irish Independent is here in the studio. And lads, we have to start at the RDS and Friday night with these lads.
As the champions play through the middle, and Lowe bursts through the gap. He's got an option left and right. Might not need them at all. Lowe still going on. That's a magnificent individual try. James Lowe didn't need any of the support runners alongside him. He had the power and the gas to go himself. And now Ty Furlong galloping through the gap. Furlong looks to his left, sells a dummy, tips it on to James Lowe. Try on here for Leicester. If Lowe can run it inside to Luke McGrath, who goes over for his second. Now it's Sexton with a ball through his legs, and out it goes to Lowe. And he gets another try. It's champagne stuff from Leinster at the moment. Their 5th try of the night. McCarthy flings it out to Bird. Back it goes to Larmour. And that's another Leinster try. Sent out by Jordan Larmour. It's picked up inside by Ringrose to Henshaw. And stumbling from 10 metres out, he stumbles over the try line. Ronan, the only forward to get a try this evening. And now they have got one, and it's Jack McGrath that's come up with the ball at the base of that rolling ball.
There you are, Eddie. So I don't know what your highlight is. You can have Sexton through the legs, you can have James Lowe's number of moments, you can have the Tyke Furlong pirouette and then straight back up to rejoin the attack, or whatever you're having yourself. It was fairly scintillating stuff.
Yeah, it was even a lot easier than we thought. We thought Wasps would come to town and put up some sort of a battle, but it was like just want my traffic. I mean, Leinster in that sort of form was scintillating, and I don't think Wasps were actually that bad, although it's hard to argue that when you can't see that many points. But I just think when Leinster get on top of you, like you just drown very quickly, and that's the worry teams have playing, especially when you come to Dublin. And the game can often be reasonably tight. I mean, it was fairly close up to half time. When you think about it, it was like that. Just come to half time, the scores were pretty much 14 to or 7 to 3.
7-3,
yeah. And then they got that try to make it 14-3 just at the end of the half. The yellow card, and I just think that was Wasps thinking they could probably keep going here, but they would win it. But then once Leinster getting toffee, the wheels come off and just racked it up. I mean, they basically put 40 points up in the second half. It was just unbelievable stuff. But that's the calibre of team you have there. You can't be a little bit off and they'll kill you. I think Di Young was pretty shocked at that team's performance. How bad were Wasps? How good were Leinster? It's hard to tell in those scenarios. I mean, I have to say I thought Leinster were outstanding, but Wasps were woeful as well. That's the other side of it. And it's hard to see them being that bad again. But by the time they meet Leinster, the pool will probably be over for Leinster to win the pool. But look, there you go. We expected Leinster to win, probably not that easily, but it just probably shakes everybody a little bit in the tournament to see Leinster putting teams away like that. Yeah,
Rory, that 10 minute sin binning of Sopoaga seemed to almost snap Wasps. It was like a piece of plastic and it just went, and it was 7 points to 3 when he went off, and when he comes back on the far side of half time, it's 21 points to 3. Yeah. The game is effectively over. What was your sense of that first 38 minutes?
I actually went on ESPN around that time just to check what the stats were, and I think it was something like 79-73 in terms of possession and territory, and 7 points is very little return for that. A 4-point lead. Leinster would have been pretty unhappy, I think, going in at half time, and I thought it was a harsh. In fact, I don't think it was a yellow card. I don't think it was a penalty because the pass was forward initially, so they got a stroke of luck. But the game they played was designed to tire Wasps out, and I think the floodgates probably would have opened. Tommy Taylor, the Wasps hooker, had made 20 tackles at that point.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of numbers you can't sustain.
They went to Di Young in the crowd a few times, or certainly once in the first half, and he was saying, "Yeah, look, the work rate is great and everything, but we can't keep doing this. You're just not going to last."
And they don't have the bench either. I don't think, with the injuries that they have. So look, I think my sense was that if Wasps get it 4 points down at half time, it was a serious result, and it's the kind of thing that you can kind of cling to and say, lads, we've hung on in there, and let's play our own game. But I'm not sure they would have had the legs to do so. But yeah, Leinster will look back on that period as a series of missed opportunities, because they are quite clinical in the way they look at these things. The mood this morning at the press conference was very much that we can get better.
Liam Cullen mentioned the set piece.
Yeah, there was a couple of throws. I mean, it was a very windy night. Sean Cronin won't be happy with a couple of the throws. It was a bit glitchy, but then the second half they went and did a job on Wasps. They have to find things to work on, and there is things there to work on. But I think they showed everything they needed to show to put the frighteners on everyone across Europe, and they still have room for improvement. They still have players, internationals, banging on the door to try and get into the team this week. They're in a ridiculously healthy place, going over to Toulouse on the weekend, and for everyone else, it's just pretty scary stuff.
Yeah. I mean, Eddie, you're banned here from saying it's only October, because every pundit is making that point this week. But I mean, yes, there's a long way to go, and yes, injuries can absolutely play a role here. But I mean, it's the defining performance of the weekend. They are by a distance the best team in Europe.
Oh yeah, nobody can touch them at the moment. And look, we're just talking there. Rory was talking about the first half. I think Leinster hadn't much on the board coming up to half time, but what they're doing is they're just beating teams up physically. Like, if you look at Leinster's play in the first half, it was really, there was nothing special about it. It was just relentless physical confrontation. Like, runners one or two passes away at most. The odd time they go more than two passes, but huge amount of their attacks are one-off runners, second-off runners. Their ball retention is phenomenal. I mean, they just don't turn over ball at rucks. Like, they're very, very good. Their percentile on ball retention at the breakdown is consistently 96, 97%, which is extraordinary considering the amount of rucks they have. Like, I think the other night was over 140 rucks. And then the amount of tackles the opposition had to make. I mean, Wasps were asked to make over 200 tackles, or they didn't. They missed a bundle. I mean, they missed over 30 tackles. But it's in the last 30 minutes of the game when they're two scores away, or maybe three scores away, and you're not going to beat them. Human nature, guys just slip off tackles and they don't work as hard, and you just get worn out physically and mentally. And then they just whip you for the last 30 minutes. There's 30 points on the board and you don't know what happened. And that's how they play it, like Leinster. They have this capacity to basically choke teams out. And they did it. Like, I thought last year, what really convinced me they were going to win the European Cup last year was that the way they dispatched Exeter in the pool games back-to-back at home and away. Like, they beat Exeter playing like Exeter, which I would have thought is probably not the best way to go about it, but when it works, you can't complain. So they've that capacity. And we know then they have that. The guys out wide, when fellas slip off tackles or they don't tag the football, the ball's out of the tackle and you're skinned on an offload, or they beat you around the corner. So they're very good at locking teams up for an hour, beating them to pulp, and then just, as I said, take them to the woodshed for the last 30 minutes. And there's not much you can do about it. Like, that's the point. There's not much you can do about it. They're just that sort of depth and strength. And then fellas coming off the bench with 20 minutes to go, internationals bursting out their socks to make a statement. It's nightmare stuff for most teams. So, look, what a start. There's nobody going to back against them. No, it's a long road, yes. Things can change, but you can only judge them on what they're doing, and what they're doing at the moment is top drawer.
Yeah, and it was interesting. Tyke Furlong was interviewed by Brian O'Driscoll on the pitch, the warm-up for BT beforehand, and Brian said, well, what's the plan? And Furlong said, well, given the amount of possession we gave Munster the last day, we're going to keep the ball.
Yeah.
And, like, true as their word. I think Sexton, the stat came up on the half-hour mark that he'd had the ball 14 times in the first 25-30 minutes, had kicked it once, and they just executed perfectly. A few things jumped out. I mean, it was scary the way they celebrate that 8th try. It was like it was the match-winning try. There is a hunger about this team. There were 27 internationals to pick from. We can talk about the usual suspects. I think it is worth mentioning Luke McGrath, who has done nothing wrong other than getting injured at the wrong time this year and missing a Grand Slam campaign, but he popped up with 2 tries. He always seems to be on someone's shoulder. The criticism of McGrath is maybe he's a bit slow at the pass, takes a step. But, I mean, he's ahead of Cooney and Marmion when he's fit, when all things being equal behind Conor Murray?
I think it's a very important discussion at the moment, because there is a very realistic chance that Conor Murray's not going to be around in November at this stage. So there is a legitimate race between the 3 starting scrum halves of the other provinces to get into that number 9 shirt. And you can there's recency bias and all of these things. He was the standout. I mean, Cooney was very good for Ulster.
Cooney got
as
man
well.
of the match as well.
Yeah, and he moved into 10, and he's just such an impressive footballer. But McGrath just looks like the prototype Ireland-style player. He looks like he's not Conor Murray, but he's probably the closest that Ireland have to Conor Murray, with his own threats that he brings that are not, that are different to what Conor Murray has. And it's, I listened to Andy Dunn and Malcolm Kelly yesterday. The fact that he pops up on the shoulder all the time, his positional sense is excellent. His break is very good. He backs himself. His decision making is very good, and we're beginning to see the younger players take responsibility for their own decisions. I mean, one stage Gary Ringrose threw Johnny Sexton out of the way and said, "I want the ball," and that's something that we might not have seen 2 or 3 years ago. But in McGrath, away from home in Toulouse this weekend is another test that if he passes it, I think he'll definitely be back in the squad. I thought it was a strange one that he missed the Australia tour because he was back fit, but he had a kind of a run of bad injuries. Maybe they wanted to get him a summer off. But he looks like the leader of a very competitive field. I don't think he's head and shoulders above anyone. I think Marmion has a lot of credit in the bank. Yeah. A lot of things that Joe put store into that he's performed for him before. And Cooney is a leader in an Ulster dressing room. So none of them are Murray. None of them are only close to Murray's level, but they're all very good at scrum halves who could do a job. And it's going to be very interesting to see who he picks. He might pick a few different ones over the course of the month. And if Murray doesn't make it back, it's that one on the 17th of November that we'll all be looking out for, because that's probably the guy who's going to be in the frame for the World Cup.
Yeah, Eddie, Rory references Mal O'Kelly there. He was in here yesterday. He was singing McGrath's praises in the main, don't get me wrong, but he was just saying if there is an issue, and if there has been an issue traditionally with McGrath, it is that maybe there's a bit of a slowness about his delivery. There's just that, kind of cliched failing sometimes with scrum-halves where they take a step, and he says that's something I'm sure he's working on. Where are you on McGrath?
Well, I think he's playing out of his skin. He had a super game on the weekend, but here's the thing: he has to. There's no wriggle room. McGrath knows that every game for Leinster is a dress rehearsal for Ireland now, and like the fact, as Rory rightly points out, that Conor Murray is unlikely to be around for the autumn, from what I can tell. Now it's who's going to make that statement during the autumn? Who's going to be the backup to Conor Murray for the World Cup? And there's 3 guys in the front. There's no doubt. Marmion has a lot of experience, very good player. Unlucky to get injured there a couple of weeks ago, but he's a very good player. He's been there. Joe Schmidt knows him and has obviously picked him many times. And then Cooney's really come up on the shoulder of everybody else because of his performance at Ulster and very strong leadership from him. So these 3 guys are in a scrap for one shirt, really, because we know Conor Murray's getting the starting shirt. So that's why McGrath has to be on his A game now. And he is on his A game, in credit to him, under pressure. But next week's another game he has to on his A game in France, because they're all scrutinised now and they're all under pressure. So that's why I think you're seeing that level of energy and execution from him, because he knows this is it. If he doesn't deliver now, and it's the same for Cooney and the same for Marmion, if they don't deliver now, there's a chance they get squeezed out in November. They get squeezed out in November, they probably won't see the Six Nations, and then it's curtains really for the World Cup. So that's the pressure they're under, and that's why you're getting this sort of response from them, which is brilliant for Joe Schmidt. It's brilliant for them as well. Yeah,
everything's just going incredibly well at the moment in the main. You don't want it to change. So we are streaming here on Facebook as well as going out on the radio. So if you are watching on any of our social channels, get your comments in for the lads, our Heineken Star comment, and you will win some nice OTB branded goodies this week. With that in mind, Stephen Murphy is watching on YouTube. I honestly think this Leinster team would give the All Blacks a game. Discuss.
Steady on now, lads.
Discuss. He didn't say win. He said he'd give him a game.
It's like they're not far off the Ireland team, but yeah, I think you've a bit to go.
What about the Crusaders? How would they do down in the Rugby Championship?
That was talked about. Like Leinster have talked that they'd love to have that game. They've shown Crusaders clips. That'd be a hell of a game. I think the Lions showed when they played against Crusaders with after 2 or 3 weeks that there still is a gap between a test level side and a provincial side when they won down there. But I would like to see that game.
Yeah,
it's pity they don't do midweek. The All Blacks don't do midweek games when they're over against full-strength teams anymore.
Yeah, it's true. And, well, interestingly, Lawrence Dallaglio compared Leinster to the All Blacks. Now, he didn't say they'd give them a game, but he just talked about the ruthlessness. He talked about the way they took advantage of the Sapoaga yellow card. It was very All Blacks.
It's the pressure game. They'd never give you a moment.
He said as well, it's the finest squad, and certainly he said the finest 15 he thinks he's seen in European Cup history. So this is what he said in the Sunday Times yesterday. It's a big statement. He says maybe the Toulon Galacticos are comparable, but he was giving Leinster the nod because they had a younger squad.
Yeah.
So that's the esteem they're being talked about in now.
And it's worthy. They are getting. I mean, they do need to put together a body of work, and they're only one game into this season, and I think it is a 2.0. It is the start of a new Leinster team rather than it's part of the legacy, but not. Sexton and 3 others have been there for all of them, but I think there's very much a sense this is a new team. So this team needs to prove itself a bit more before it gets into that conversation. It's coming off the back of Toulon won 3, Saracens won 2, and Leinster have only won 1. But the potential is there, and their age profile is excellent. That Toulon team was pretty much a 2007 World Cup Hall of Fame collection. Saracens much more, a current English book supplier, Leinster. And I think if they come across Saracens, who've lost Billy Vunipola now for the pool stage, it looks like with a broken arm, that'll still be a game. I mean, they only beat Racing by 3 points, and the guy who kicked it is gone. Yeah. So there's definitely, you can't get too carried away by one game. It was really impressive. Wasps weren't very good, but still they look the best team in Europe. Rory,
we're in the media. Of course we're meant to get carried away. Will Leinster win the World Cup? That's up for discussion next Wednesday. Before we go and leave Leinster for a second, we've talked about James Lowe so much over the last number of weeks, there's no great need to. Suffice to say, and here's a clip of him in his post-match press conference, if you are the offending party here, we are not very fond of you.
My car got broken into last night. Man, I couldn't bloody believe it. Living in the hut, nah, they didn't take anything. Oh man, I don't know what's going on. They broke the bloody smallest window and then just ran off. If you find them, tell me. Police rang me yesterday. It was quite weird, a funny chat. I was like, man, if you do find them, give me 10 minutes with them. And he just giggled to himself. But yeah, apart from that, it's been outstanding. Me and my girlfriend have really settled in. We're enjoying our time here. She's enjoying her job, and that's half of it. You get your life sorted off the field, and on the field becomes easy. So, like I said, paint and Prosecco. I think is tomorrow. I don't know the Prosecco side, but I'll back my painting skills, and I'll tell you on Monday how we go.
He needs to get on to Bundy. He got Robbie Henshaw's laptop back for him.
That's true, yeah. He can do no wrong. He's just enjoying life at the moment. He's amazing. And he was asked, why are you such a cult hero already? And he said, it's just because I look different. That's the only reason. There's a few tries and a bit of brilliant play in there as well. And just an interesting fella. He did an interview a while back where he said he used to be very worried about what people thought of him. And then he got to a certain age and just completely went the other way and stopped. And now is just totally himself. And probably does help your rugby when you bring that attitude on.
You'd love to see it rub off on a few people. You'd love to see just people see that he's not the end of the world. No one's dying. This guy's given a lot of his personality. It's a very interesting personality. Yeah. But he's enjoying himself. He's playing with a smile on his face and he's winning. Yeah. A lot of people could learn from that.
No, it's absolutely true. Meanwhile, Munster went to Sandy Park the next day, 10 points apiece. It certainly transforms the complexion of this group. So Gloucester at home at Thomond on Saturday, and then back to back with Cast, and then away to Gloucester, and suddenly, and it's a big if with everything that can happen in rugby, of course, but if it boils down to Exeter at Thomond in round 6, Munster would have taken that absolutely before the start of this pool. So a really good result. And yet, Eddie, us being greedy, you'd have grabbed 2 points before going over, and then you kind of come home with 2 points and you wonder, well, they could have got more. What's your sense of that game?
Yeah, I actually thought that once CJ Standel scored, they were going to nick it. I just thought that, the turning point in the game for me was that double play by Duncan Williams after the line break, where he went track back and he made a fantastic tackle on the full back. I think he made a tackle on Phil Dolman. I think he obviously tackled, and then he got up straight away. And if that ball came out of the ruck as it did, and they got it away, I still think they would have scored. And then he made he made the second tackle on Stu Townsend, who knocked on the ball. That was bullet. That squeezed by Munster's ear, because I think had it on the 17-3, psychologically it'd been a long way back. And Exeter are a very good team, very tough side, mentally tough, fantastic work rate. I think they're a phenomenal team. But anyway, long story short, they got out of jail there. And then I felt like, they have a shot here, and then they scored. And I'm thinking, they could nick this. But to be fair to Exeter, they dug in. I think if there's another team that Munster had there by the throat, they'd have probably beaten them. But I think Exeter are a very difficult side to beat. But I think Munster, the big takeaways from Munster are that physically they matched Exeter, more than matched them. They gave as good as they got. I thought Carberry was excellent. Barty's snafu at the end where the ball went dead, but that was just bad luck because it was a howling game. He was unfortunate. And I think if Exeter had nicked the game at the end there, the home games they won were pretty fat, really decent tests. So you thought this would sort them out. And I have to say, you've got to give credit as Joe Munster came up trumps. I mean, even though it's a draw, it's probably psychologically as good as a win, because they're in control of the pool. Great job, well done. And I think we all felt there was this performance was in Munster. Well, when was it going to come out? And by golly, it came out on the right day, because that was a tough one away at Exeter. And I think, they could have nicked it. But look, take the 2 points, wrap it up and go home, because this won't be finished till the last game of the pool anyway. Yeah,
it feels that way. So Van Gran, Rory, talked about the immense effort. Tadhg Byrne came in and said you just would not believe how Peter O'Mahony came into the press conference and just insisted this was a brilliant result. Trust me, you've no idea how difficult it was out there. You were at the stadium, obviously, for the Irish Independent. I mean, the wind, we could see it with the kicks in particular. You'd see banana kicks and Munster performance on the whole. What did you make of it? I mean, there's lots of good and bad in there.
I think a lot more good than bad.
Okay.
Yeah,
But didn't they have a lot of time in the Exeter 22 in that second half?
Yeah, but in those conditions, your pass is slower. It's a difficult against a really. I think because they haven't really produced it. We talked about it last week how Exeter haven't really produced it in Europe.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they have the overall respect of the Irish public yet, but. They looked like a horrible team to play against. They just looked like this. They were so comfortable in their defence. They just fan out across the line. They come up aggressively. They hit you hard. The ball is slow because Duncan Williams isn't the greatest passer in the world, but also the ball is really slippy. The wind is affecting the pass.
Yeah.
You have to be doubly sure of your catch. That puts you on the back foot initially. I thought they came over with a game plan that was perfect for the conditions and for the opposition. They kept it to. They probably shouldn't have been 10-3 at the break. They controlled it for 35 minutes and ground, and they did get themselves in positions, and they were guilty of their old failing of being rash in the 22, which they were guilty of the previous week as well. I mean, even O'Mahony, who I thought was exceptional alongside Byrne, I think the two of them in tandem is just a really potent force. And
he's still binding Stephen Archer, by the way.
Yeah, people are obsessed with this. I don't think it makes. I think it's one of these. I just don't see the benefit, and If he does get a penalty given against him, that's a silly penalty to give away, because there's all sorts of reasons why you might be getting more force in your tight head, but you're losing the kind of pressure that's coming across the whole scrum.
Sorry, you mentioned Byrne. I'll let you continue. Byrne 13 out of 13 tackles, 16 carries, and it's his first season running the line out as well.
Three poaches on the Exeter ball, and a very crucial line out towards the end as well. And the way he takes the ball at pace is like James Ryan at Leinster. He just comes across, and Williams a couple of times actually gave it to him forward because he didn't spot the line until it was too late.
Yeah.
He was excellent, and I think their back five now rivals anything that's out there. Even Leinster, I think they're a bit short in the front row still. Their back line isn't as strong, but their back five, with that back row and those second rows is really, really, really strong. So there's a lot to build on. They're a brilliant winter team. I think it's when they get to the semi-finals in the dry days, when they have to take those chances, they maybe struggle a little bit. But there's signs of progress, and it was a proper result, a proper Munster performance away from home with a big away crowd. Even in their glory days, they used to lose their first game away in England. That was why they needed miracle matches. This was a good result.
A question on the Carberry kick at the end, Eddie. So a twofold question. Obviously, it's downwind and everything. One, so if you're the coach, benefit of hindsight, sitting in the armchair. One, do you want him? I think it was 79 something on the clock. Do you want him to hold it, or do you want him to kick it there? And secondly, if you want him to kick it, do you want him to find touch regardless of how far he goes down, or was he right to try and pin them back as far as possible? So it's a two-part question.
Yeah. Well, I think it's foolish to play around like that in your own half, because on a wet ball like that, anything you knock on or someone goes off their feet or ruck, or you're just asking to pin into your corner for the last few minutes to make a mistake.
Yeah.
So get the hell out of Dodge. Now, I think the option there was, in the circumstances, if you look at the line-out scenario, like Munster stole 6 line-outs, and the problem was for Exeter, that's not them a bad line-out, but you've two guys like Byrne and Peter O'Mahony, who was world-class as a defensive line-out jumper. The wind was howling. They could not throw beyond 2 or 4 at best. So what Munster did, as you'd expect, they stacked the front of the line-out with Tadhg Byrne and Peter O'Mahony. So I would have probably, in that circumstance, I think he should have roofed it into the touch and then made Exeter win a line-out, which they were struggling to do. And you might nick it back, and then you might go down and score. The danger is, even if that kick didn't go dead, like I said, they picked it up, Exeter were going to counter-attack, and they are pretty relentless side as well. We saw from the scrum in the end how close they got. So probably on a balance, he was right to kick it. He probably should have put it into the bleachers and then put huge pressure on the Exeter line-out, which was working really well for Munster. Like 6 out of 9. I would have fancied maybe 7 out of, or 6 out of 15. I would probably 7 out of 16 at that stage, because they were beginning to panic at Exeter as well. and there was a bit of a when lineouts get panicky, they tend to misfire anyway. So I would have backed Munster to maybe nick that lineout, make Exeter win it anyway, and then defend from it. That'd be my take on it.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I mean, who'd be an out half at times? You could feel Joey Carberry's stomach fall out of him as he realised it was going, and he got away with it 22 phases. So a really good result for Munster. They've Gloucester next Saturday, and then Ulster. I mean, just to complete what was turning into a really good weekend for the Irish provinces, we had Conor Morris there commentating on the game alongside Paddy Wallace, and they put 24 points on Leicester, 24 points to 10 the final score. Leicester 3-0 up at half time.
And Rory Best goes all the way to the back, and that was almost over everybody, but they do have it. Ulster hands on it, and they drive towards that Tigers line. It's there for Cooney, and he sets it up for his forwards. 2 or 3 of them take it on the second charge, and they're in. And Ulster, just 3 minutes after the restart, have the first try of the evening, and it was picked up by Reedy, and the groin just got the better of him. Reedy looked as though he might be in, and they might be in here with Addison. Has he got there on the slide? He has. It's midfield partnership of McCluskey and Addison, and they go wide. Oh, they're in again. Jacob Stockdale has wrapped it up here for Ulster, Shirley Noy.
Yeah. So, I mean, what a good start to a tricky European pool. They've got Scarlets and obviously Racing in that pool as well, and they go to Racing next Saturday. But just if there was a time, Rory, where Munster fans and people involved with the province will feel we can begin to draw a line on the awfulness, the basket case stuff, the toxic feel about the whole place last year for reasons largely off the field, but on the field as well, then it did feel like an event. It did feel like a bit of a watershed moment for them. It was kind of a happy place for the first time in what feels like a very long time. Yeah, and you know, you don't want to ruin that for them. I thought it was 2 bad teams. I thought it was 2 mediocre teams.
You've completely. Yeah, I know. Yeah. But Ulster were the better of the 2, and they deserve their win. But they've a long way to go in this pool, and they'll need to improve massively. I just have massive fears about their scrum. Like Connacht beat them up a week previously up there when they lost, and their scrum was in real trouble. And I just don't know what's gone on at Leicester for the last 3 or 4 years. Yeah. But like Dan Cole, one of the most experienced players, just gives away so many penalties. Like he's lethal. Like he can win a scrum, and he gives opposition so much opportunity in games. But they took the tries well. Michael Lowry was a nice success story. You know, they've got young guys coming through.
Had you seen much of Lowry before? Because he's nominally an out half. Yeah. He's 20 years old, and they had to shunt things around. Cave was missing, a few were missing, so he went back to full back. They put 6 up and unders on him in the first 20 minutes, because I think he dropped the first one. Yeah. He's 5'7", if people didn't see the game, and ran a couple of great lines, and there was the George Ford sin bin, because I mean, he made great ground. He was in on the try line and this kind of seatbelt tackle from behind. So, Lowry, for a 20-year-old, really impressed. Really, and I remember talking to Mike McGurn a number of years ago when he was talking about the size that's in rugby, and he was saying that he reckoned the next innovation was going to be, you know, that every team would have a Shane Williams style player. If that's the best way of avoiding. And he saw him dipping underneath the second nose tackle that time, and you know, I don't know if Mike was right on point. We haven't seen it as an innovation over the years, but it was interesting to see a guy like a pocket rocket kind of, you know, a player we don't really see very often. And him and Stockdale and young players like that don't seem to be affected by the negativity that's been around. They just seem to come in and play. Angus Curtis has been very good. I know he went off. Burns, I think, I like the look of Burns. He's getting better. If they can start getting, you know, Dan McFarlane's a former prop. If they can get their scrum right, I think there is potential to grow. I don't think it'll be this season they make those steps. Yeah. But there is young players there. Timoney, I think, has been very good. Coetzee was excellent. I'm like, they've been waiting for Coetzee for 2 years, and finally they have him on the pitch, and long may it last, because he is just, you know, they're paying him a lot of money to be there. He's their marquee signing, and it's unfortunate for the 2 coaches that went before that they couldn't call on him. But you know, when you have him there, he just gives you so much. There was a big turnover on the line. His ball carrying is very good. So there's definite like signs that they're of an improvement, but I think if they go to Racing with that scrum, they're in real trouble this weekend. And that's what, you know, the coaches won't be getting carried away, but it was important that they got a good night up there, and there was a lot of empty seats, and you want to see those filled. Ulster need their crowd behind them. Yeah. To extend your point about 2 ordinary sides to point on the Premiership, Eddie. So, like, Wasps are, you know, best of the rest at the moment. I know there's maybe not a huge gap between third and next few places in the Premiership, but Wasps go to Leinster and ship 52 points. Exeter, one of the great hopes for the Premiership, are held by Munster. We have Leicester losing very badly here, and they've really fallen away in the last couple of years. We saw Bath and Freddie Burns and that whole mess. And Bath are in a weird state as well. It seems like Todd Blackadder is half in the role, but they released a statement a couple of months ago saying, well, they've got a guy from within who's going to take the role, but maybe he's not quite ready yet. And, you know, it just seems like not being particularly well run as well. And the overarching point, I suppose, is about money, whereby it seems they're continuing to pay these huge salaries. The salary cap is very much in place, so they have thinner squads. And you're kind of looking at the Premiership wondering, is this it?
Well, I don't know if it's sustainable at the way things are going for them, you know, and they're all trying to keep pace with the French clubs as well, who are paying mountains of money, as we know. And I think Saracens is probably, you know, the most consistent and successful club in England, have huge debts. You know, so it's a bit of a, I suppose, it's a good league in the sense that it's quite tough, it's quite attritional, and that, but it's very hard for teams to sustain themselves on it. You know, teams go up and down that league frequently. You know, like there was not too long ago, Northampton were a force in the league. They nearly got relegated. Harlequins are a force. They're struggling. Leicester have fallen off. Gloucester have begun to come now, but that was after a few years of turmoil. And Wasps, Saracens and Exeter are probably the three that have been more consistent in recent years. But Wasps now are struggling. So I don't know if that model they have is sustainable, really, because I think that I don't think anyone make any money except Exeter made a small profit. Everyone else is losing money. So how long can you keep doing that unless somebody's got very deep pockets, which maybe in Bath they have? But you know, it's a worry for them. And then it's probably exacerbated when they go to Europe, you know, and they get pretty much beaten around in Europe. And the excuse is, well, we've had to play more games than your guys. It doesn't stack up. You know, I thought Jordan Murphy's defence of the shellacking they got in Ulster was pretty poor. Like Rory Best had so many weeks off.
Yeah, I have the quote here actually for people who didn't see it. Rory Best had sort of 18 weeks off in the summer. He came back. He played one game last week. He looked fresh tonight running around. Tom Youngs has played 8 games in a row for us. Yeah.
Well, the problem there is that if Leicester are a beaten docket in the middle of October, imagine the mess they're going to be in by the end of February. You know, like, if they're tired now, they've no chance. Like, so I don't get where that's come from. Plus the fact Rory Best was injured, so it's a bad comparison. But it is a tough league, there's no doubt about it, and it's quite attritional. And it is their national tournament. Like, it is the English tournament. We probably not as excited about the Pro 14 because it's across 3 countries.
Yeah.
That for them is it's their national tournament, the champions of England. And then, I mean, I know they do want to do well in Europe, but it's very hard for them in the sense that there is a bit of burning the candle at both ends. But having said that, you know, the same time that they've underperformed in Europe, you know, and if you look at historically over the years, they've struggled to get into the knockout stages of the tournament. So I think it's a bigger problem for them is that Europe is becoming a bit of a boil on their backsides, really, because it puts extra pressure on a system that's already under pressure to stay where they are in their own league.
Yeah, because I saw Bath got a lot of criticism. There was a backlash against Bath a couple of weeks ago when I think it was away to Saracens. They rested a lot of players because they had Exeter at home the following week. So they're targeting games, and there was a real sense of, well, that's not how we do it in the Premiership, and that kind of conversation is happening. And speaking of Bath, Rory, I'm not sure what more we can add to poor Freddie Burns' story.
No, he's... look, I don't have any sympathy for him, really. Like, whatever about the kind of smiling and everything, the blow and the kiss, put the bloody ball down. Like, I don't think there's any excuse for it, and you see a lot of people, there's been an outpouring of people feeling sorry for him. I'm not so sure. I mean, especially because Tom Homer did it 4 weeks before in the same game, for the same team.
Rhys Priestland came out and said there might be something culturally wrong here if we've done this twice in the space of a month. Look, I'm going to come down on the side of the try botched situation was the worst of the two, but honestly his kick from about 18 metres straight in front of the post off the post, given that's his bread and butter, is close to being even worse. Now, we'll never remember it in a year's time.
And he scored a lovely try in the first half, but he's cost his team so much in that one incident. And Madar deserves huge credit for chasing back and is an example to us all about never giving up and all that sort of thing. But
interestingly, I think those two met for a coffee on Friday. They're mates.
I think it was Mermoz.
Oh, it was Mermoz.
Yeah. But they were in Twitter exchange, a bit of a love in afterwards. But it was a crazy moment in professional sport. You just can't get away with that. I mean, it's going to cost Bath so much, and even the fact their coach rotated for a Premiership match, and then they have the chance to win the game they rotated for, and they blow it. Blackadder spoke very well about how we have to put our arm around them now and support them, and like he's an important player for them. He's a very good player.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got to put the ball down. He'll never do that again anyway.
Yeah, Eddie, I guess you're torn between wanting to absolutely go through him, and also you need him to be in a good state of mind for next week.
Well, that's Todd Blackadder's problem. I'm sure he put his arm around him in public, but he might have had a bit of shit later hit him in private.
He took him off, didn't he?
You took him off straight away, yeah. Either as punishment or because maybe he felt his head was fried. It's hard to know exactly.
Well, it's probably his head was fried, but yeah. I have no sympathy for him. I've always been against showboating in rugby. I remember, I know Jamie Heaslip didn't take well to it when I advised him before his first cap not to showboat if he got a try. And I don't think it's part of rugby. I think if you score a try in rugby, dot it down, go back and shake hands with the guy who gave you the ball to put you over the line. And stop taking. It's a team sport. I just have no time for it. I think it's bad for culture, and it's not just that. Other teams do it. I just don't get it.
Yeah.
And anyway, that's just me. I'm old-fashioned. But having said that, I've no sympathy for him. But it could be very expensive for Bath at the end of the season. And plus, as Rory said, missing a kick in front of the sticks like that's unforgivable for a guy. That's his job. But look, I'm sure it's not going to change. He's got to go out next week. He's got to front up and play well. I'm sure if he plays well next week and he's in the zone and he's doing fine, everyone will forgive him until they get to the end of the pool games and find they've missed out on quarterfinals by a point or something.
And for Leinster, it puts a pep in the step at Toulouse next Sunday in France, so that's another maybe result of it. Before we go, and our rugby coverage is brought to you in association with Air Sport, the home of rugby in Ireland. We should mention Connacht, 22 points to 10 win over Bordeaux in the Challenge Cup. They've Sale next week, scored 3 tries in the end. It wasn't Bordeaux's strongest team. I don't know, did either of you get a chance to see much of this?
I didn't.
Neither I, because it was played alongside the same time as the Munster game, so didn't actually see it. But I wasn't surprised that Connacht won, and they played, by all accounts, they played well. I've talked to a few people who were at it,
right.
But Connacht are playing well at the moment. But I wouldn't get carried away beating Begley Bordeaux at home. And I don't know. Again, I suppose it's no harm if they get a good run in the Challenge Cup, and the friends said they wanted a good run that it would bolster them for the Pro 14, but I suppose for them, it's not the same. They've tasted the European Cup and they know what that's like, and they want to get back to that. So the Pro 14 is probably their bread and butter. But having said that, it was a good win. But Sale again going next week. Who knows with Sale, because I think Sale have their own problems. Like Sale are second from the bottom of the Premiership in England, and the problem for the teams in France and England is the other kind of sort of Damocles is that there's promotion relegation. And if you're the bottom third of your league, like Europe becomes a real migraine to worry about. And you see that the French have never made excuses like that. The English are beginning to maybe see it the same way now, but Sale are below Bristol at the moment and just above ahead of Newcastle. And they don't have any wriggle room. So I think they'll play Connacht next week, they'll pitch up, but they won't lose any sleep if Connacht were to get them. So it might be a great chance for Connacht to actually take control of that group and kick on and get to the playoffs. Okay.
Just before you go then, kind of one-word answer territory, I might get your predictions for next week. So it's Leinster away to Toulouse, 4 stars in each jersey. It's 2010 since Toulouse's last Heineken Cup win, and the Guy Novez era has taken its time to ebb away. And they weren't in it last year, so they're back. They finished third in the top 14 last year to get back in. So it's Leinster away to Toulouse. We mentioned Munster of Gloucester and Ulster in Paris for Racing. Do you want to give me your 3 predictions, Rory?
Leinster very narrowly, harder than people think. Munster and Racing 92.
Okay. Eddie, disagree with any of that?
No, I think that's pretty much on the money for me as well.
Okay, great stuff. Thanks very much, lads. Appreciate it.
Cheers, Joe.
Cheers.
Monday Night Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Air Sport, the home of rugby in Ireland. Visit airsport.ie.